friends, in the previous session we discussed about the electron transport chain and we explained the details of electron transport chain. In today's session we are going to continue with the topic of anaerobic respiration. So anaerobic respiration is often referred to as fermentation. Normally, instead of calling it anaerobic respiration, we normally call it as fermentation. Now, present thinking suggests that life originated in atmosphere without oxygen, and the first form of life were therefore anaerobic. So anaerobic respiration, in short, is the type or category of respiration which is going on or which proceed in absence of oxygen. So in absence of oxygen, the type of respiration which is going on in the body, it is anaerobic respiration. Or even in the presence of oxygen, but if the oxygen quantity in the body does not meet the amount of oxygen required, does not meet the demand of oxygen required, that means the category or the type of respiration which will proceed in the body, it is anaerobic respiration. So what we are knowing now is that the life was suggested to come from atmosphere, and in that atmosphere we didn't add oxygen. So due to that, that means the form of life which were there, it is anaerobic. A variety of microorganisms use anaerobic respiration as their major source of ATP. Some bacteria are actually killed by normal atmospheric level of oxygen and have to live where there is no oxygen. So you see kwamba kuna some of the organisms ambao wanakuwa killed due to high concentration of oxygen, or even normal concentration of oxygen can kill some of the bacteria because they are bacteria which like the environment with the oxygen. So if we want to capture, if we want to grow these bacteria, we tend to put them in a medium or in the environment where they are anaerobic. We call them the anaerobic medium. If you reach in the university, you'll learn about these mediums such as the Robinson's meat culture, which is anaerobic. One among the anaerobic medium, we have many of them. You will study them in microbiology. Now, they are termed as obligate anaerobes. For example, Clostridium tetani, which cause tetanus. So Clostridium tetani is one among the bacteria which is obligate anaerobe because it grows only in the presence of carbon dioxide, high concentration of carbon dioxide. Only normal concentration of oxygen tend to kill the bacteria. So that's why the removal of these organisms from the body and to capture them, we are capturing them, and soon we put them in the medium or in the condition where there is no oxygen. So let's continue with our introduction to anaerobic respiration. Our introduction to anaerobic respiration. So what we are saying ni kwamba other organisms such as yeast, organism wengine kama yeast, other organisms such as yeast and gut parasite, yani parasite ambao wao huwa wanalive kwenye tumbo, hawa wao kwao inakuwaje, such as tapeworm can exist whether oxygen is available or not, whether oxygen is available or not. So manake wao oxygen ikiwepo wanaishi, isipokuwepo wanaishi. Unaona, it is different from the Clostridium tetani ambaye yeye ana survive in absence of oxygen only. So our organism, they can survive on anaerobic respiration when they have to, although respire aerobically when possibly, and they are called facultative anaerobe. Facultative anaerobe. So facultative anaerobe wao wanatumia oxygen kama oxygen ipo, ikisha oxygen wanaendelea anaerobic. Wakati obligate anaerobe wao wanatumia carbon dioxide, na in presence of oxygen they die. So that is the difference between the obligate anaerobe and facultative anaerobes. Also, some cells that are temporarily short of oxygen, such as muscle cell, are able to respire anaerobically. So some muscle cells, they are able to respire anaerobically, and they produce lactic acid which can cause the muscle cramp, kama ambavyo tutaenda kusoma huko mbele kwenye hii discussion. Now, like aerobic respiration, The first part of anaerobic respiration is glycolysis. This makes pyruvate from glucose and produces a profit of 2 ATP and 2 reduced NAD molecules. In aerobic respiration, the hydrogen on the reduced NAD is oxidized to water with the release of energy. But this is not possible in anaerobic respiration because oxygen is absent. So the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration is the two right steps of aerobic respiration, as we discussed in the previous sessions. As we said that respiration takes place in 3 stages. We have glycolysis, then Krebs cycle, and electron transport chain. So in aerobic respiration tends to take place in all of the 3 stages. But in anaerobic respiration only takes place through glycolysis. That is because in absence of oxygen, the link reaction or the transition reaction does not proceed. And if the transition reaction does not proceed, that means there is no formation of acetyl which can enter the Krebs cycle. And then at the end of the day, there is no Krebs cycle and no electron transport chain. Because the electron transport chain also uses oxygen. Oxygen acted the final hydrogen acceptor. So in absence of oxygen, that means electron transport chain cannot proceed. So anaerobic respiration produces only 2 ATP from glycolysis. Only 2 ATP from glycolysis. Now instead, the hydrogen is added back to pyruvate. Hydrogen ambayo inakuwa carried by NAD is added back to pyruvate, and its potential for the release of energy is therefore wasted. Kwa hiyo hydrogen haiendi tena ku release energy kwenye electron transport chain. This process does not yield energy. The process of addition of hydrogen to pyruvate ambayo tutengeneza kwenye glycolysis does not yield energy. It is just merely mechanism for mopping up the hydrogen ions. Kwa manake hiyo ni mechanism ili kwamba zile hydrogen ions zisipotee, kwa sababu zingekuwa zinaenda tu kwenye NAD kule zinge accumulate, then at the end of the day we could lack NAD for accepting hydrogen, thus hata glycolysis yenyewe stop. So in order to mop up oxygen, or in order to sweep up to remove the oxygens, we are combining them with the pyruvate, forming another molecule. So by definition, fermentation is the product of alcohol, is the production of alcohol by microorganisms and plants, as well as formation of lactic acid in animal muscles. So in the microorganisms and the plant, anaerobic respiration produces alcohol, while in the animal muscles, anaerobic respiration produces lactic acid. This is the very important concept for you to remember, because the process is the same, but the results of the process, there are difference in plants and animals. So in microorganisms and plants, anaerobic respiration, which is fermentation, results in the formation of alcohol. But in animals, in animal muscles, anaerobic respiration, which is fermentation, results in the formation of a lactic acid. So we'll start about the 2 types of fermentation, which are lactic acid fermentation and alcoholic fermentation. Alcoholic fermentation occurs in plants and microorganisms, results in the production of alcohol, while the lactic acid fermentation occurs in the animal tissues or in the animal muscles, resulting in the formation of a lactic acid. This is also called the anaerobic respiration. Fermentation, sometimes it is called as anaerobic respiration. So anaerobic respiration is the type of respiration which does not require oxygen. That is the simplified definition of anaerobic respiration. Now indicators of anaerobic respiration is the generation of incomplete oxidized end product without use of oxygen. The generation of incomplete oxidized end product without the use of oxygen. Kwa kwenye anaerobic respiration tunatengeneza incomplete oxidized products. Kwa sababu gani zinakuwa incomplete oxidized? Kwa sababu kunakuwa hakuna oxygen ambayo ingeweza kufacilitate reactions za hiyo process yetu. Kwa if we don't have oxygen, that means pia hata process yetu inakuwa imekwama hapo, and the type of reaction which is taking place we call it the anaerobic respiration. So in terms of our types or categories of anaerobic respiration, tunakuwa tuna 2 types kama nilivyokuambia mwanzo. Tuna alcoholic pamoja na lactic acid. Alcoholic inatokea kwenye plants and microorganisms, while lactic acid inatokea kwenye animal muscles. Lactic acid fermentation inatokea kwenye animal muscles. So types of fermentation or anaerobic respiration, we have alcoholic and lactic acid. Now let's start our discussion by discussing about the alcoholic fermentation. In this process, the pyruvic acid, which is pyruvate from glycolysis, is converted into ethanol through removal of carbon dioxide, followed by reduction of ethanol to ethanol using NAD2H at the hydrogen donor. Kwa kwanza tuna remove carbon dioxide from pyruvate. Tukiremove carbon dioxide from pyruvate tunapata nini? Tunapata ethanol. Ethanol is an aldehyde. Then we reduce an aldehyde to an alcohol. We reduce aldehyde to alcohol. So yeah, tunachokisema ni kwamba in alcoholic fermentation, kama unavyojua kwenye organic chemistry, kama umesoma au hujasoma organic chemistry, ni kwamba hapa let's say tuna alcohol as functional group, hapa tuna carbonyl compound, hapa tuna carboxylic acid COOH. So kwenye organic chemistry, from alcohol to carbonyl compound hapa, that means we have aldehyde and ketone, aldehyde and ketone. So from alcohol to carbonyl compound, which is aldehyde or ketone, here we are doing oxidation reaction, we oxidize. But also from carbonyl compound to carboxylic acid, we are doing oxidation reaction. This reaction also always they are done in presence of oxidizing agents such as manganese 4 peroxide. Now from there, if we want to do the reverse reaction, that means we must reduce carboxylic acid to carbonyl compound, then carbonyl compound you can reduce it to alcohol. So that's why the reduction of NAD here, in our case, I mean reduction of reduced NADP reduction. I didn't want to mention reduction of NAD. It is the reduction of reduction of ethanol produces ethanol. Reduction of ethanol produces ethanol. Now what we are saying ni kwamba in alcoholic fermentation, the pyruvate from glycolysis is first converted to ethanol or acetyl aldehyde au jina jingine tunaita ethanol through the removal of carbon dioxide. So pyruvate kupeleka ethanol tuna remove carbon dioxide, then from there what happens? Through the removal of carbon dioxide molecule, the reaction is decarboxylation reaction and is catalyzed by decarboxylase. The enzyme decarboxylase catalyzes the reaction. Pyruvate decarboxylase, you can call it decarboxylase or you can call it the pyruvate decarboxylase. Anyway you recall it, it is the same. Now even though pyruvate inavyoonekana ina carbon 3, from there tunaiconvert kwenda ethanol. So unaweza kuona hii ni carboxylic acid ina oxygen hapa, then to remove carbon with 2 oxygen. So to remove carbon moja, then to remove with 2 oxygen, let's say this oxygen and this oxygen. So we'll end up with the carbon, then carbon double OH, this is ethanol. So from there plus carbon dioxide, from there the ethanol then combines with the hydrogen ion, which is transported by hydrogen carrier NAD to form alcohol ethanol. The reaction is catalyzed by the enzyme alcoholic dehydrogenase. Kwa unaweza kuona here we have ethanol, alcoholic dehydrogenase, here we have NAD H, then here we have oxidized NAD. So this is reduced NAD, this is oxidized NAD. We are getting ethanol. This form of fermentation occur in yeast, where the alcohol produced may accumulate in the medium around the cells until its concentration is fatal. Okay, let's stop here and then we'll continue in the next page reading about the information about that type of fermentation. Until its concentration level, which prevent further fermentation and so kill the yeast. So concentration inakuwa fatal kwa sababu gani? Kwa sababu ikizidi sana inakuwa support fermentation and then inamuua yeast mwenyewe. So ethanol cannot be further broken down to yield additional energy. There is no any breakdown, or there is no additional breakdown of ethanol to release energy. And this is how the overall reaction tend to take place. Overall reaction, because of the presence of 2 molecules of pyruvate, will form 2 molecules of ethanol and 2 molecules of carbon dioxide. So alcoholic fermentation takes place in plants and yeast cell or fungi. Ethanol is the alcohol found in alcoholic drinks. Vinywaji vingi ambavyo vina pombe, ile pombe huwa inakuwa ni ethanol. So its occurrence in yeast is made use in manufacture of beer, wine and other alcoholic drinks. Kwa hiyo yeast, tunatumia mila kutengenezea pombe mbalimbali, na that is because of the presence of ethanol, or ability of yeast to perform metabolic reaction which end up with the formation of ethanol. So ethanol is the waste product that still contains a lot of energy. For example, it is used to make gasohol, that is gas from alcohol. A fuel that is used for cars in Brazil, gasohol, a fuel which is used for cars in Brazil. Overall, 2 molecules of ATP are produced per glucose molecule. 2 molecules of ATP, they are produced per glucose molecule in alcoholic fermentation. Now, economic importance of alcoholic fermentation: we are producing alcohols which sometimes in the hospital they can be used for anesthesia or for some other procedures which involve the central nervous system. So used in the brewing industry, where it is used to manufacture beer, wines and etc. Kwa hata kama kwa watu ambao wanamwamini Yesu au watu ambao tumeokoka, kwetu sisi kulewa ni dhambi, lakini nchi na geni economy kutoka kwenye viwanda vya bia. From there, number 2, carbon dioxide produced from fermentation is used in baking industry for making breads. Baking industry, so tunatengeneza mikate kwa kutumia carbon dioxide. Then vinegation is produced by fermentation of activity of lactic acid bacteria. Vinegation, that is production of vinegar. Now from there, let's move to the second part of fermentation, which we are discussing about the lactic acid fermentation. Now this occurs in the animal muscles. In this process, the pyruvic acid formed from glycolysis is reduced by NADH2 as donor of hydrogen atom to form lactic acid. So this reduction, it is direct. It does not involve the removal. Of carbon dioxide. So in the fermentation, we are removing carbon dioxide to form ethanol. But in these types of reaction, it does not involve the removal of carbon dioxide. Now let me find out my page here so that I can continue with the discussion. About the reaction. Yeah, let me find my page here. So yeah, my page is this one. Let me continue with my discussion here. To continue. So the reaction is catalyzed by the enzyme lactate dehydrogenase. Inaonekana pyruvate vile ina gain hydrogen from NAD tunatengeneza lactate. This form of fermentation is commonly in animal muscles. Unlike alcoholic fermentation, the lactate can be further broken down should the oxygen be made available again, thus releasing its remaining energy. So lactic acid ina uwezo kuwa broken down again, lakini lazima inapokuwa broken down iko kuna nini? Kuna energy. So that's why lactic acid is normally taken to the liver, and there the process of converting it into energy continues. Alternatively, it may be resynthesized into carbohydrate or excreted. So lactic acid unaona kwamba yenyewe ina uses bado sio sawa na alcohol ambapo ipo. So if lactate is allowed to accumulate, in the muscle, lactic acid become poisonous, causing muscle cramp. If you ever hear about the football players and they are saying nimebanwa na msuli umekaza, this is what we call the muscle cramp, and it is because of the accumulation of lactic acid which becomes poisonous to the muscle. So lactic acid nyingi inakuwa ni kama sumu. One among the scientists said that everything is poisonous, but what matters is just the concentration of the substance. Now, in the process of lactic acid fermentation, the organism accumulates an oxygen debt, which is paid back as soon as possible. Oxygen debt occurs during vigorous exercises. So, what is the oxygen debt? As the term suggests, oxygen debt is like the muscles, they become in debt of oxygen. Ni kama zinadaiwa oxygen. That's why we are calling it as oxygen debt. So in oxygen debt tunatumia extra amount of oxygen which is stored in the body. So that means ikifika mazingira ambayo organism amerest, lazima aweze kupata tena oxygen ili aweze kuendelea kusurvive as usual. So in conditions of oxygen debt, manake organism anakuwa ana consume oxygen ambayo ilikuwa stored. So consume oxygen ambayo imekuwa stored, that means yeye mwenyewe atabakia kama vile ana deni. Kwa oxygen debt haina maana kwamba mtu anakuwa anachukua oxygen toka somewhere, no. Inatoka humo ndani ya mwili, We'll explain it later, not now. We'll explain it later about the concept of oxygen debt. So oxygen debt hapa, as a part of introduction, oxygen debt is the extra amount of oxygen required by the body after exercise to metabolize lactic acid to supply the higher metabolic rate of muscle warmed during exercise, but not supplied from outside of the body by breathing. So muscles zilipokuwa zinafanya respiration zilirequire kiwango fulani cha oxygen. Zinaporequire kile kiwango, zikisharequire kile kiwango, manake zinafanya anaerobic respiration, zinaproduce lactic acid. Zikishatengeneza lactic acid, ile lactic acid inakuwa transported to the liver. Now there is amount of oxygen which is required to metabolize that lactic acid. Lakini kama muscles zingekuwa zina sufficient oxygen, that means lactic acid isingekuwa formed. So that's why tunaita debt. Kwa sababu gani? Muscles zinapotengeneza lactic acid ni kama vile zimekopa oxygen, lakini kwa sababu zinakuwa zijakopa, ile oxygen mara kinakuja kulipwa baadaye by metabolizing the lactic acid. All we can define it is the oxygen used to convert lactic acid into carbon dioxide and water. Is the oxygen used to convert lactic acid into carbon dioxide and water, So let us look for the next page here. Let's discuss a few things about the differences between glycolysis and fermentation. There are a few differences, and then we'll complete with some of the similarities and differences in the next 2 pages. Now we are going to discuss the differences between glycolysis and fermentation. Now remember the features of glycolysis and fermentation. Glycolysis produces 2 ATP and fermentation also produces 2 ATP. But fermentation ends up with lactic acid or ethanol, while glycolysis ends up with the pyruvate. So we are saying that glycolysis, the process involves the breakdown of 6 carbon sugar molecule into 2 molecules of 3 carbon pyruvic acid. While fermentation, the process involves formation or production of alcohol by microorganisms and plants, as well as lactic acid by animals in the muscle. In glycolysis, it involves oxidation by dehydrogenation of the sugar molecule by hydrogen carrier NAD, but this involves reduction of pyruvic acid molecule by reduced NAD, either direct or indirect. From there, upon some the end products are 2 ATP molecules, 2 reduced NAD, and 2 pyruvate molecules. 2 ATP, 2 adenosine and 2 pyruvate molecule. Wakati kunasema the end product are alcohol such as ethanol, lactic acid, a molecule of carbon dioxide and another molecule. Ukija kunakuja kuona energy is released in the formation of ATP, energy is used up. Those are the difference. In terms of similarities of this process, both occur in the absence of oxygen. They do not require oxygen. Glycolysis do not require oxygen. Fermentation do not. Both are enzyme controlled processes, and both processes consume energy. Enzyme controlled and consume energy. And in terms of the differences between alcoholic and lactic acid fermentation. In alcoholic, ethanol is the final product. Lactic acid is the final product. Here, decarboxylation of pyruvate releasing carbon dioxide. No decarboxylation, carbon dioxide is not released. Now let's continue with the differences in this page. Let's continue with the differences in this page. Difference between the alcoholic and lactic acid. Now, enzymes involved are decarboxylase or pyruvate decarboxylase and alcoholic dehydrogenase. Here only lactic acid dehydrogenase. Alcohol does not release energy supplied with oxygen. Lactic acid releases energy if supplied with oxygen. So this differentiates about the usage kama recycle, kwamba ni compound ipi tunaweza kumtumia tena, compound ipi hatumtumii tena. Haya, hapa tunasema alcohol does not release it is of economic importance. It is of economic importance since the process is applied in brewery industry kwenye alcohol. Wakati it is disadvantages, harmful since accumulation of lactic acid in muscles result into muscle cramp. Kwenye similarity zote zinaokaa, both do not require oxygen, both involve glycolysis at the initial stage, both occur in the cytosol of the cell, both are enzyme controlled reaction. Enzyme controlled occur in the cytosol, then zote tunasema kwamba they do not require oxygen and both they involve glycolysis at the initial stage. Wakati similarity kati ya aerobic and anaerobic respiration, both produce energy. Moja na produce sana, mwingine kidogo. Both involve breaking down of food substance. Then both cause involves glycolysis. I mean both cases involves glycolysis which take place in the cytoplasm. Both produces carbon dioxide as a product. Both takes place within the cell. Those are the similarities between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Here we have some of the differences. We have some of the differences between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. However, I hope these differences, we have discussed them several times, so tunaelewa nini ambacho kinaendelea kwenye hizi differences. So aerobic, anaerobic. Kwanza, exchange of gases occur between organism and the environment. Kwenye aerobic kwa sababu tunakuwa tunahitaji oxygen, lakini kwenye anaerobic exchange of gases is absent. Kwenye aerobic, respiratory substance is completely oxidized to carbon dioxide and water. Wakati kuna incomplete breakdown of respiratory substrate. Number 3, the end product are carbon dioxide and water. Huku the end products are carbon dioxide and alcohol. Carbon dioxide and alcohol, not carbon dioxide and water. So huku it involves Krebs cycle and electron transport chain. Huku no Krebs cycle and electron transport chain. Huku nasema occur in the cytosol and mitochondria, wakati hapa occur in the cytoplasm only. So tunaposema kwenye cytosol, maana glycolysis, mitochondria ni zile stage mbili zinazobakia. Complete oxidation inatengeneza 38 ATP, huku 2 ATP. Occurs in all living, occurs in only few fungi, bacteria and plants. Require oxygen, require no oxygen. This is similar to point ambayo ni however inaweza kaingia kwenye point ya kwanza. So Oxygen is the last hydrogen acceptor. Katika pyruvate the last hydrogen acceptor. Pyruvate the last hydrogen acceptor. Can be affected by carbon dioxide and cyanide. Carbon monoxide and cyanide cannot be affected by carbon monoxide and cyanide. So in our next session we discuss about the concept of ATP summation. We discuss about the concept of ATP summation, and then from there we discuss also the concept of oxygen depth. ATP summation we discuss it in all categories of respiration, and then we shall see how to calculate the efficiency of respiration, efficiency of aerobic and anaerobic respiration. We discuss the concept of oxygen depth and the intermediate effect of exercise, how exercise lead to oxygen depth, mechanisms used to supply to maintain supply of energy during exercise, what are they, and then we shall see if we shall finish up with the uses of oxygen depth before moving to the alternative respiratory subset, where we discuss about the respiration of fat acids and then respiration of protein, and we will end up with the factors affecting respiration as we are almost to the end of our topic of respiration. So stay tuned and continue to share the sessions. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more information in advanced biology, chemistry, physics and mathematics. Thank you. Nice studies.